The idea here, Tulsi, that Amazon, Washington Post, as I like to call it, has decided to endorse no one, to me, that's very unique in the sense that Jeff Bezos and these other billionaires have tried to buy newspapers to influence, realize they are losing influence because of their bias, or at least perceived bias.
Yeah, it's a very transparent exposure of what their real motives are. It really is interesting when we see how many people in the mainstream media are so freaked out by Jeff Bezos' decision to not have the Washington Post endorse any presidential candidate. I think his op-ed was very well written and was very crystal clear. I think a lot of these other legacy media organizations should kind of take a page out of his book and recognize what he pointed out, which is the American people trust the mainstream media less than they do Congress, and Congress is always at the bottom of that list. Yeah. And so they should really look in the mirror and ask themselves, why is that? Why is it that the American people trust Joe Rogan way more than they trust any of these mainstream propaganda media sources? Is because they are biased, and they are spreading propaganda. And as much as people like to say, oh, well, nobody cares who these papers endorse, I don't really believe that. I was kind of surprised. I was sitting at the airport the other day. Don't ask me which airport, but I was sitting next to a guy who had the New York Times, like the actual newspaper, open, and he was reading it page by page like we used to do when we were kids. We need to be able to trust these organizations not to favor one candidate over the other. And in the case of the New York Times and many others, that's just not the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you did fair comparisons and policies, and there's some policies they might like from Harris, but there might be a few policies they actually do like from President Trump. But right now, I feel like, Tulsi, those would not get printed in most of these newspapers, because anything that shows that Donald Trump could somehow have better ideas than a Democrat. And I'm trying to look at other ways they're going to try to spin this. For instance, I was thinking, Tulsi, if they had just polled their subscribers, they'd probably have such bad numbers of 80-20 or 70-30 favoring Democrats that it may even look worse.
Yeah, exactly. I think they may realize that they are a dying form of media, given their very low subscription rates. I mean, Fox News Digital has much greater reach than any of these other, including the New York Times, in being able to get information to people. And I think this is part of the reason why they're freaking out. But, the American people aren't stupid. And I think this is one of the problems that we see from the MSNBCs of the world and the network TV broadcasts and the New York Times and others, is they really think the American people are stupid. And they really believe that people who are supporting Donald Trump are either stupid or, in the words of Hillary Clinton and others, that they are deplorables or fascists or Nazis or whatever. They throw these names out, and it just shows more poorly on themselves than Donald Trump how out of touch with the reality they are. Also, too, this importance of what the ACLJ is launching, I can't say it enough. So this is the ACLJ.org Protect the Vote initiative. What we've decided to do is let's make sure that we have the resources now to fight the battles that we've already started to come in, especially all the calls and questions we get on Election Day. And then if anything doesn't go right, or if states are taking way too long to count the votes, we can then intervene as well. So people need to contact us. If you're in a place like Pennsylvania, if you're in a place like Michigan that has already announced that they won't be able to count the votes, make that note when you submit your form that, I'm concerned not about necessarily voting, but the fact that they're already announcing that it's going to take days in my states. And that makes me kind of feel like if it does, then is my vote going to really be counted, and how many other votes that they're going to be let in? I think all of that is still on the minds of a lot of Republican voters. But what I think has been great is that we embraced early voting yet again. It had been probably since 2004, maybe 2006, that Republicans really got behind the idea of early voting. Then it kind of tampered away as we're the Election Day party. And now it's back again, because the numbers that we're seeing are impossible early votes for just Democrats. And it used to be about 30, 70. And I would think right now, in a lot of polls they've taken, it's much closer than that.
That's right, Jordan. You're seeing places like Pennsylvania, you're seeing Nevada, you're seeing lots of other places around the country where that early vote total, and some of those states even report by party registration. Now, you don't know what someone voted for, but a lot of times that's a general indicator of the direction that they voted. And you're seeing just the people registered Republican in places like Pennsylvania, they are far surpassing the early vote totals than Joe Biden won by. That gap between 2020 and 2024 early vote totals from Republicans are surpassing the vote total that Joe Biden won by in 2020. So that would be a positive indicator for the Trump campaign.